Welcome back to Following Note on a Stormlight podcast. This week is episode 116, and we are continuing part 3 of Rhythm of War, chapters 52 through 56. Paul, how are you?
I'm great. I got a sad but with glad news. My microphone passed away, so I got a new one. So that's exciting. I have a new microphone. I don't know if people can tell a difference or not. I can't actually hear myself. Maybe when this episode airs, I'll get to go listen. But doing good. Very excited to get further. We're going through part 3 now, so I'm excited.
Sounds good. How are you, Elliot?
Doing quite well also. I too am surprised by how fast we're going. It seems very strange to say when we're spending, 7 or 8 months reading a single book, but it seems like we're moving along faster than I thought we were going to, which is kind of fun.
Yeah. Paul, who's on our mug before we get started with the episode?
Our lovely mug this week is my apologies to any Italians out there. It's alla Genovese pesto is the name of the container, the mug. But and we have a longer name, so we're gonna have to do a spin here. We have a new surgeon, which is Sebastian, and my handwriting is really bad. So, as everyone knows, it's been like 50 or so episodes now, or however many. I don't know at this point. Sebastian is our new surgeon, and we're very appreciative of all of your support of our little podcast here. Just 2 years ago, we were just getting started, and here we are with Sebastian at our side. So it's just great.
Yeah. Thank you, Sebastian. I thought that was a candle when you first held it up, like one of those little really shallow candle things, but you just kept pulling it further into frame and it just kept getting taller. So
that makes sense. I did a very thorough job of washing this, but there is the ever slightest hint of pesto still. So delicious, sort of. Not really.
Better or worse than your Italian seasoning?
I think better. Yeah, I think better.
All right. Do you guys have 2 words to summarize episode 116? Start with Elliot.
Indeed.
And also, how was your week, Elliot? Did we ask that? I'm sorry. I thought you didn't ask him.
I did.
He asked me. I gave a short answer about how
done.
fast we're moving through the book.
I'm sorry. I thought you just ignored how his week was doing, so I'm sorry. I tried to stand up for you, but looked like a fool instead.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you looking out for me. I do also have 2 words, and they are little kiddos.
Little kiddos. Paul?
My 2 words are building up.
All right. Let's use these 4 words and talk about Rhythm of War. Building up little kiddos. Who wants to go first?
Paul does.
I think ours are the same. I think ours are about the same thing. Mine was in reference to building up little kiddos, quite literally.
Okay.
There's kind of a moment in, I believe, chapter 54, where Dalinar has a talk with Gavinor, Elhokar's son. At first off, it was really we'll probably dive into it a little more as we go forward, but hearing about Gavinor's just state of mind, just where he is it was very heartbreaking. It was very sad.
Yeah.
But also there was hope of he was getting better. He's getting better. He's growing, and it was just a heartfelt, emotional moment with Gavinor. The young child, and it was kind of a time that I felt Dalinar was working to build him up. So that was part of it, as well as we kind of have a lot of stuff going on, which I just feel like is overall building up to wherever the pinnacle of this book is going to go. I'm guessing something with void light or some kind of new light or something crazy. But we're in part 3. We're really starting to like ramp up more um, towards the climax of our story.
I took a similar subject, but took it in a different direction. I did pick little kiddos for Gavinor, but then also for Kaladin's little brother, whose name I can never quite remember correctly. It's like Orodin or something like that.
Yeah.
Is that it?
Yep.
Okay. I took it in more of like not quite a negative light, but more of like a heart wrenching like sadness type of emotion that I was feeling in those sections, because there's the scene here where the pursuer decides to go after Kaladin's family, which for the record is fairly low down and dirty. But I don't know why, but that scene was actually, I was worried. I was legitimately worried in that moment that we might be about to lose like a member of Kaladin's family, like either his father, his mother, or the little one, because we know what the pursuer is capable of. And so to have Venli and Leshui like step in there and help out, actually, I think I was more like emotionally tied into that moment than maybe I should have been. It was a very short segment, but it was like a, I don't know, my heart started beating a little hard. And then there was a second one with Gavinor, which was what you talked about, Paul, that moment where Dallin talks to him, which was super cool. But I think like a certain part of Elokar's death hadn't quite sunk in for me until that moment. Like that moment resurfaced some emotions that I hadn't quite, felt in a while since Elokar's death. Like having to watch Gavinor process it was painful.
Yeah. Gavinor's a pretty unfortunate age for all of this to be happening, because he's barely old enough to comprehend what is happening, but not old enough to understand why and who is
right.
like who all is behind this and everything like that. So he understands enough to understand that mommy killed daddy, like that's just terrible. But
Yep.
all right, let's talk about chapter 52 right off the, well, in chapter 52 we have a spell check. We haven't had a spell check in a little bit. We have an ardent lady. I don't know if she's an ardent. Somebody who's affiliated with Gavilar gifts Venli a sphere and talks to Venli in her language, which we can talk about in a little bit. But what is her name? We will be doing a spell check here. So, what, Elliot goes first for these?
Paul can go first. It's fine.
I think
joking.
so. Yeah, so
Joking.
It's been a minute. It had me questioning myself there.
I almost gotcha. Yes, I'll take a shot at pronouncing this name. Can't even pronounce. Not a good start. As soon as I read it, I figured, oh no, I'm gonna have to be saying this one. There's a few tricky letters in here, which I know I'm gonna stumble over, but as usual, I think I just gotta go for it. So the name of this lady with all the rings on her hand is Axindweth. I just kind of have to like mush some of the syllables together and like Axindweth.
Okay.
Or something.
That's a good reaction. Paul, what do you got for us? You can alter based on what he said.
That's true. So I gave my I wrote down my guess beforehand, like before we started recording, and I would just like to say that I heard this and was like, okay, I think this is one of those that's not too hard. I think I'm just oversimplifying. Like I'm gonna overcomplicate it. So I went very simplistic. And then as Elliot was like, man, I saw this one and I just knew it would be a spell check. And then like had probably like 8 more syllables than I had. So the way the audiobook pronounces this name is Zindweth. Zindweth. So what I wrote, which I might I might re-guess this. What I wrote knowing Zindwith, I went a very simple. I also asked Trevor specifically, because I was trying to remember, was it like an Alethi name? Was it a Parshendi name? Really gathering my clues here. Language of origin. Can you use in a sentence? All the stuff, for my spelling bee. And I just went very simple. I said Zindweth.
You're very close.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's better than I expected. After hearing, I couldn't even tell you what Elliot said. He was like, Archon Zindenadweth or something. And
You're just missing the beginning, which is throwing me because you're the way you're saying it seems to be leaving out the whole first syllable.
Yes, they so the correct way to spell it is AXINDWETH. So they treat the X like a Z sound, and then they just skip the A.
Why? Have we seen this before? Like, is this a new language? Like, since when? Just skip letters.
It's just, it's
this
optional.
Is new. This is new. The name is whatever you want it to be as the reader.
And not remotely palindromic either, which is sometimes a clue.
Yeah,
or a
she's
help.
foreign, right?
Is it a clue? That's an interesting thing you bring up. What does that mean, Elliot? Whose names are palindromic?
Well, yeah, that is.
It's a Vorin thing, right?
Yes.
Which is quite curious, and I guess that does lead us into our discussion on her, perhaps, because I am trying to really figure out who this is. She's attached to Gavilar's entourage. I think it's mentioned at some point that she's a surgeon's assistant, which I don't know. Maybe that's a cover, or maybe it's not. But she should be Alethi.
Yep.
And or Vorin.
Yep.
But
her name does not reflect that.
Name is not anywhere near what we
which would give the clue that she's not from around here.
Right. And I think she even says something to Venli about like, oh, I don't actually share this name with most people, but my name is this. So yeah, very suspicious.
So when she's talking to Venli, and I want to stay on this for a little bit, she talks to her in her language, which surprises Venli, and Venli is like the language scholar. She is there to translate back and forth. She's there to teach the humans of like the singers' songs and stuff. So if anybody could speak her language, Venli would, be in contact with them and being... I'll just cut straight to the chase here. Do you guys remember when Dalinar speaks to the Azish in their language without knowing it?
Yes.
And what power was he using there?
Well, it was specifically one of his radiant powers.
It's the one that pulls things together or something, isn't it?
It's the bondsmith's interpretation of adhesion, of pulling things together and uniting things is the power there. I don't know if this is that's just where my mind went to. I don't know the answer to this. But speaking languages that you're not supposed to be able to speak, that's where my mind went, of Dalinar being able to speak or to be heard in their language. Because the reason why I went there is because I don't know if Zindweth could know this language traditionally, because they've only met one or two times before this, right?
Well, we're made to believe that, right? But I think that's from the perspective of the Alethi. The Alethi have only met a handful of times here.
Okay.
But the fact that this person clearly knows way more than the Alethi know, and knows exactly what she's doing when she hands Venli this gemstone with the void spren in it. All of that leads me to point to more of this person knows a lot about listeners, singers, even. And
maybe even, more specifically, probably singers, maybe even knows like ancient singer language, and that's how she knows the listener language. Yeah, okay. I'll buy that.
So, Trevor, I have a yes or no question for you. Did you? Maybe it's not a yes or no question. So I did you make the spell check for us to like notice and point out things, or solely innocently as oh, this is a funny name?
No, the
Or
spell check
was there more
stemmed
to it?
from the Discord when some of our Discord members were looking forward to trying to listen to you spell that name. So that's where that came from.
Okay, okay.
But
I didn't know if
it
this
just
was your
happened. It just happened to land on a particularly interesting character.
okay. That's fair, and it could easily be both. But
Sure.
whenever Elliot pointed stuff out, I was like, "Ooh, okay," you know,
Hmm.
very sneaky, pointing us at something. So
But yeah,
perhaps,
I am a
perhaps.
big. I am happy that Elliot noticed that because that's a very Brandon Sanderson clue to drop is she's supposed to have a Vorin name, and you guys notice that is this is not a Vorin name. That's supposed to tell you something, and I'm glad you caught that.
One parallel or guess perhaps that I might make is the only name I can draw a comparison with is actually Zeth. There's just kind of some sounds, some letters in there that might be similar to Zeth's name, which is Shin, as
Mm-hmm.
far as we know.
Yep.
So perhaps there's something going on there, which, I mean, we already know that the Shin know way more than everybody else. You know, they're apparently just over there sitting on all of the honor blades, you know, kind of stuff. So for them to have someone who knows the old language of the singers, I wouldn't be too surprised. I guess the only caveat against that I might think of is that they're very ethnically different.
Yeah.
They are noticeable in their appearance, and
Right.
we didn't get any sort of description of this person as pale and Shin looking.
Right.
But yeah, I'm curious. The language thing, interesting note though. I'm going to keep my eye on that because while I think there's other explanations there. That this would be fascinating if this language thing is some sort of ability, not just a knowledge.
I wonder if she could have Ishar's blade.
I, why not?
Would that
Mayhaps.
would that give her? I assume so. I assume that would give her that power.
It should, right?
Yeah. As far as we know.
Interesting.
Although she wouldn't be able to just dismiss it, right? You can't dismiss honor blades, right? I,
That's true.
I don't think you can dismiss honor blades. Anyway,
They're just like there.
right?
They're
Because
like blades, normal blades.
Dalinar had
Yeah.
to stash the Windrunner one instead of like bond it, dismiss it, or whatever. Anyway, what does Zindweth give Venli, the actual bomb drop of this chapter?
She gives her she gives her a gemstone,
Yeah.
and she explains. I don't remember what exactly she says. But basically, she says, you know, go into the storm, spawn this spren like you know how to do, and it will unlock everything you're looking for, or something like that.
Yeah. What's the hook that she gets Venli with? Why does Venli end up accepting this? That's set up at the beginning of the chapter, which I want to push on this because how does she know this? This hook is important.
It's her mother, right?
Yes. She says, "This will heal your mother." And just at the beginning of this chapter, we got the reveal that Venli's mother, Venli Nashanai's mother, is beginning to deteriorate from Alzheimer's and or a similar memory disorder disease. So how does Zindweth have that much information to where she can hook Venli with your mom is dying and I know this and this will save her? Like that's some Anakin getting tempted with the save your loved one's dark side stuff.
Finding where it hurts, you know. Seems like it.
And also a knows suspiciously more than they should sort of thing.
Right. But I can understand knowing a suspicious amount about like the listeners in general, or like, you know, how spheres work. That like there's enough ancient knowledge out there to where you can there's specific people who would know that. I can understand that. But to have insider information in the listeners, like her specific family, to know that her mother is beginning to suffer, like that's a fact that just Venli is beginning to accept herself. Like where is she getting that information?
How many heralds have we accounted for? There's several that we don't really know much about, right? I mean, when it comes to like suspicious people popping up and doing random stuff that's maybe crazy, that's kind of where my mind goes.
To answer your question, all of the guys are present and Shalosh is present and accounted for. 4 of the girls are missing.
I'm missing one guy though in my count. I know we've seen Yezrian, we've seen Kalak, we've seen Taln, we've seen Nail, we've seen Ash.
What did you say? Yezrian, Taln, Kalak.
Yezrian, Taln, Kalak.
Ishar.
We've seen Ishar.
Yeah, we
know where he is.
Yeah, you know where he is. He's the god king dude in Tukar who's leading his own army against the singers.
Okay.
He's kind of crazy though.
Nothing new with our heralds. Right. The only one who didn't seem extremely crazy was Ash.
Yeah.
She definitely crazy.
But a little less maybe.
Fair.
Mayhaps. Comparatively to the rest.
Have we seen Kalak?
We haven't really seen dialogue or anything.
I was going to say, have we seen him currently since?
No, we just know he was in that like prologue.
Right, but I'm just trying to think if we've seen him since then.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Not that I know of.
Yeah, we saw him in the prelude, obviously, and then we did see him in the prologue as well.
Yes, the prologue to this book.
Correct. But we haven't seen him since Gavilar's death. Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Got it.
But anyway, Herald, question mark?
Yeah, I could buy that.
Two more things real quick on this person before we leave it. She does mention, like at the very end, that she's been sent by someone.
Yes.
It's just kind of mentioned offhand, but I'm left kind of asking who? Who is out there that knows a ton of information, wants the singers to attain their void bringer power, whatever you want to call it? I don't know that this quite matches up with a person or an organization that we have encountered before. I'm sure it could, but there's no obvious like, oh, this is Ghost Bloods or oh, this is Sons of Honor. It doesn't. None of those seem to quite fit.
I would argue Sons of Honor is fairly obvious.
Well, here's the thing: Sons of Honor is also Gavilar and Amaram, right?
Right.
So, which this person seems to be acting independent of them. She seems to know things that Gavilar is still trying to find out.
Right.
Gavilar is here trying to learn about the singers, not coming already having unlocked all the secrets. This person seems to have all the secrets.
Right.
So for that reason, I'm divorcing those two.
Okay. Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm curious. As usual.
Yeah, I mean, I would still say the strongest contender is like because she's with Gavilar, right? And Gavilar brings her to the Shattered Plains multiple times, and so my guess would be right now that she is in the Sons of Honor, but she's also knows more than the Sons of Honor. So she's aligned with the Sons of Honor to help them, but she's in it for her own motives and has an ulterior motive than just bring back the Voidbringers, which is the Sons of Honor. That would be my guess.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have something else for her?
No, that was it.
Okay. 53. Present day Venli. Venli gets the reveal that Kaladin's awake. Kaladin's beating up singers up and down the tower. And she's talking to some messenger dude. I don't remember who she's talking to. But he's like, "Oh yeah, and we found his family, and we're going to kill him, or the pursuer's probably going to kill him or torture them or whatever." And Venli acts very quickly. You guys talked about this a little bit in your words, so I'll turn it over to you guys. What do you think?
So I'm excited to actually see these Venli chapters unfold now. I feel like there's been a lot of waiting for Venli stuff to happen. To be honest, not in a bad way. It's just like we haven't seen a lot compared to our previous books with their quote themed character or main character. But there's a lot of this pressure with the Venli chapters is kind of, she is incognito. She's like kind of undercover, but not like kind of, I don't know. It almost feels like she's on neither side of this war.
Right.
If that makes sense. She's not like, I want to save the humans and join them. And she's not, I want to destroy the humans. Like,
right.
It's like she's somewhere in between. I feel like she's on the side of knowledge, you know. Way to go for Venli. But there's just this like she knows that she's doing things that are illegal effectively for her crew. Being she's bonded a radiant Spren. And I just keep having this aching feeling of like, when is it gonna be revealed? When is it gonna like come to the light about Timber and everything? And this, anytime she talks to Leshwi or any of our like the heavenly ones, is that what they're called?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any of them, I get nervous of like something's gonna come out, something's gonna come up, she's gonna get caught, and whatever the heck they do with Rogue Parshendi, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But that was kind of a big part of my thought here of what was happening when she was talking to Leshwi, because we kind of see that one, she kind of has what is it, in this chapter, Timber is really kind of like pushing her forward some, or she starts to feel this like progression towards oaths.
Yeah, I do want to talk about. Go ahead.
Which is interesting. Yeah, she kind of starts to feel this like progression, and I keep thinking like every time that we've seen this in our other characters, it's not like I don't think this is entirely true, and this isn't how it would unfold. But every time we see our characters say oaths, they just like up and say it wherever they are, whatever they're doing. And I'm like, I wonder if the words like came to her at a certain moment. Like, would she say them? And then everyone's like, what did you just say? And then, yeah.
I mean, that did happen back in Oathbringer. So the very last Venli chapter we got in Oathbringer was her saying life before death, strength before weakness, journey for destination. And then a fuse comes and spins her around and says, what did you say? And she's like, nothing. So yeah, that has happened, but
that's true. I guess I didn't remember that happening like that, but yeah. At least any of our like notable, that was like ambiguous fused number 12, you know.
Right.
So she could be like, I'm in charge, you know.
I want to bring up the fact that Timber is urging her to reveal herself to Leshwi. That is strange. Like, we know, and Venli knows that Leshwi has a soft spot for Kaladin and the honor of the Windrunners and stuff like that. But for Timber to want to reveal herself to Leshwi, like that's weird.
I don't understand it other than the only thing that I can think of that might be a big thing for this is Leshwi seems to almost be on a similar page of she's not like entirely devious or entirely evil like a lot of our other heavenly ones infused are. Is it this chapter that sorry, what I'm trying to get it mixed up. I'll actually ask for y'all's help to kind of like arrange what happens in the right way.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, the pursuer is like coming after Kaladin's family, right?
Right.
And they like get away, and isn't Leshwi like kind of glad about it, or like a little relieved, or something, or doesn't something like that happen? Like she's not upset about it.
It's even more proactive than that. So Venli hears that the pursuer is going to take Kaladin's family and torture them. Venli takes action and runs to Leshwi, who up until now she has kept her distance from because she's supposed to be spying on Raboniel for Leshwi, and they're not really supposed to have a relationship right now. But runs to Leshwi and says, Kaladin's family is going to die. And Leshwi goes and actively hides them from the pursuer.
So are Venli and Leshwi on the same team? They just don't know it, kind of thing. It seems like they almost are, but we haven't seen from Leshwi's perspective, which doesn't make sense of any other things that Leshwi's really done. But like, why would she do that?
She's trying to get leverage over the pursuer because she has a soft spot for Kaladin, and the pursuer is after Kaladin. So she's trying to shield Kaladin's family because that's a pressure point for Kaladin, and she knows it.
There's one comment though in this chapter that Leshwi makes that makes me wonder if there is some possible ulterior motive. She comments about Kaladin's spren. That they're just like talking about. I think Venli might even be asking her. Yeah, Venli kind of calls her out a little bit. And she's like, hey, you kind of have a soft spot for this guy, don't you? And Leshwi's like, yeah, he fights honorably. Oh, and he has this spren. She's very ancient. And then they move on. And I highlighted that. I was like, wait, what? One, why do you know that? And two, why are you interested in that? What about Syl has drawn Leshwi's interest? And is that really all that Leshwi's after here? Maybe all this soft spot for Kaladin has been a bit of a ruse, and for some reason Syl is the center of Leshwi's interest here. Maybe. I don't want to spin an entire theory on 4 words in a sentence, but it flashed a small alarm bell in the back of my brain.
Yeah. Did that help clear anything up, Paul?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
My confusion was just about what literally happened in the chapter. I guess it was a minute since I read the first couple chapters here, so
okay.
Leshwi has kind of confused me with some of this stuff, but the leverage over the pursuer makes sense because he's kind of psycho.
He's more than a little psycho. Anything else for 53?
Just another offhand mention, something that Timber and Leshwi are thinking about. No, Timber and Venli are thinking about. It's mentioned that Reachers don't bond humans. And I think it's implied there, or even specifically stated, that Timber is a Reacher.
Mm-hmm.
Is this, I think we've come to this conclusion already, that Venli is a will shaper.
Right.
But is this our official confirmation that that's the will shaper? It doesn't say that, but it seems like we haven't seen any will shapers anywhere else. And if we've just been told that this type of spren will not bond a human, that there's our explanation why we haven't seen any will shapers amongst the rest of our radiant heroes. So it seems like that's for sure at this point.
Right. She is a will shaper. I don't know if we've been like canonically confirmed that besides the color of the title, the color of the book, um, and the banner on the book, because everybody knew she was a will shaper before the book even came out, but that's just because of how the Stormlight Archive is structured. But yeah, as far as in text confirmation, I would assume this is it. That this is the first will shaper we've seen in Venli.
That was the only other note I had from that chapter.
Sounds good. And then we kick off chapter 54 with the conversation that Eliot, you said on the podcast before that maybe in, I want to say the Oathbringer wrap-up episode, maybe, that you were really looking forward to the day when Dalinar would sit Gavinor down and tell him the story of his father and how brave he was to go to Alethkar to try to successfully save him and sacrifice his life in doing so. It's not it. This conversation doesn't quite pan out like that because Gavinor at the time was old enough to maybe understand what was all happening, maybe not why, but does understand the consequences of Elhokar's death and all that. So what do you guys think of this conversation here?
I love this scene in that it shows it shows Elhokar having a positive legacy, which is exactly what I was hoping for. That we had this character Elhokar, who we didn't really like too much. At least I think most people probably didn't. He's kind of annoying. He's kind of paranoid. He's not a great leader. But then he has this redeeming moment where he sacrifices himself for our heroes and for his son. And he speaks the words. It's this epic moment, but then he dies tragically. And the fear would be that the Elhokar we didn't like would continue to be kind of the legacy that he leaves. But what I was hoping for was this moment right here that Dalinar can tell that story of the way Elhokar sacrificed himself, and he does that. You're right, and it comes off in just more of a sad way because you're kind of just watching poor Gavinor try to process what's going on here and just kind of feeling sad that his dad isn't there anymore and his mom's not there anymore either. But it's still, it was a positive sad. Inspiring sad? Is that a thing?
Yeah, I would say inspiring sad. It's a good way to put it because it was kind of his time to like step up and help the crew kind of thing, and then it's just made past tense right away.
Yep. There's a comment in this section though that did make me chuckle in almost a sad way. Dalinar mentioned something about like, oh, he's awfully young to be out here on the battlefield, and yeah, some people don't like that. But then, how else would a child learn the ways of war?
Yeah.
It's like, what? Children don't need to learn the ways of war, Dalinar. But I guess that's the Alethi culture for you.
Well, they're kind of in a war right now, so it's like awkward.
And then the real substance of, well, the other substance of this chapter, I should say. Dalinar goes to the Windrunner stew party that they have every night, and Renarin is there. And we didn't talk about it last episode, but Renarin pulls Dalinar aside last episode and says, hey, I had a vision. We need to talk. And Dalinar's like, great. We'll talk, tomorrow or whatever. So Dalinar and Renarin step aside to go talk about this vision. What do you guys think about the vision here? There's a lot of vague symbolism here. Do you guys want to try to interpret some of this?
Yes, but then also no. This is another tantalizing moment where it seems like I should know what this means. But then at the same time, I feel like I don't have all the information, and that anything I spin together here will just be guesses. But there is some cool imagery here for sure. In Renarin's vision, he sees Dalinar in fully white shard plate,
Correct.
but he's been pierced with a black arrow.
Yep.
And that's all I wrote down in my notes. I don't remember if there's anything else in the vision.
Dalinar is fighting with his back to Odium. He is not fighting Odium. He's fighting something else while Odium is there. And then there's some creeping, like decaying black stuff everywhere, which Renarin says is himself.
It's like Renarin.
Yes.
The all white and the black arrow is really confusing because it seems like perhaps part of this is Dalinar was supposed to be Odium's champion, right?
Yes.
Odium was supposed to, haha, guess what? You're my champion. You have to fight for me. But Dalinar did not surrender his pain and did not choose to join Odium's side. So that doesn't quite make sense.
In my head, if I don't know if you're done yet. If not,
No,
I don't
go.
want to interrupt. But in my head, if Renarin is referring to himself, like the kind of creeping edge, whatever you want to call it, as himself, I'm wondering if this vision is almost like the opposite of what you would think. Like this is the almost a vision of what would have been had Dalinar been Odium's champion. He'd probably be robed all in white, like gorgeous garment, looking flawless. And maybe this like black piercing arrow is not evil. Like initially I was like, oh, this is a vision of how Dalinar is being honorable and radiant and all the good things. And this one piercing arrow is like, ooh, his Achilles heel, like something that's gonna hurt him, you know.
Yeah.
But maybe this is like an altered vision of like what would have been, and that it's like the opposite, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Because I think of it like his back to Odium, it's almost like he's fighting for Odium. And if Renarin is referring to himself as this like creeped, crumbly edge or whatever kind of stuff, maybe that's not bad. I'm
Right.
also thinking that, so we kind of learn in this part, which was my favorite part of this chapter, kind of how Odium can't really predict stuff with Renarin, because Renarin kind of has foresight into the future. And so because of that, he could alter complicated stuff there, but like he sees stuff in the future and therefore adjusts his actions.
Right.
Therefore, Odium can't really predict what he's going to do, what
Right.
Renarin is going to do. So, and what confused me initially, go back to End of Oathbringer kind of thing, was why is it affecting people that are near Renarin? And it's because Renarin's actions would then in turn affect other people's actions around him.
Because of this scene, he goes and talks to Dalinar, tells him about what he saw, and that alters what Dalinar does.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
And because of that, Odium can't quite tell what's going to happen with people that are near to Renarin as well as Renarin himself. So, all that to say, that made me think that this, like, creepedness stuff is like the physical embodiment of like almost that part where Odium can't see what he's doing. Unsure. I don't have anything really definitive there, but I'm just imagining Renarin as like literally kind of like a figurative force field for the people that he's near, like from Odium in a way like that. So I said a lot of things there that didn't really point to anything super specific, but I just think this vision is going to very much turn out to not be something direct. I'm trying to go anti what I might think it would be, if
Okay.
that makes sense.
I have something to build on that, but go ahead, Elliot.
I'll just say real fast. I'm tracking with all that actually, Paul. I follow all of your logic. It makes sense to me. The
That's good.
only no, you explained it well. That was a good interpretation, I think. The only part that's confusing me actually is the white armor. If he was, if this was truly a image false, or here's a possibility that's not going to happen. If it really was, this is what Dalinar would have been as Odium's champion. The color that we almost always get associated with Odium is gold.
Yeah.
Not white. Although I think he may have been robed in white and gold or something like that in a few of the scenes. So maybe I'm going too far with this, but I would have expected some mention somewhere of gold if this was supposed to be Dalinar as Odium's champion. And the white is throwing me off for some reason.
That's a good point. I thought about this a little bit, and I kind of chalked it up to the his theme is kind of white and gold, like the white robes, or
Yeah,
could
white
be.
gold is a thing, I guess, or yeah, that was my thought. But I think you're right. Odium's signature thing is definitely this gold. So yeah, and that's why I think it might be a false kind of thing, because it makes it look like Dalinar is in this white plate because he's so pure and honorable and outstanding, but in this vision he's actually evil, essentially. And it's more of a red herring there.
I there's a lot of keywords that you're dropping that I really like, Paul. I'm gonna take my interpretation and throw it back at you. So I like a lot of things you said. Here was my interpretation of it. This is the contest of champions that we're seeing. That's what I think. Odium is, and the whole point of this vision is the contest of champions is not going to work, is the interpretation here. And here's my interpretation here. Dalinar is in white, and I don't read into that too much. I do think that Dalinar is on the correct side, is what white means. He is his own champion. He's going to appoint himself as Honor's champion. The Black Arrow, I will come back to. Odium, he is not facing Odium. That is a big problem, because I think that means that no matter how the contest of champion goes, Odium is going to find a way to wiggle out of it. He's outside the picture watching, as opposed to Dalinar's fighting something else, and Renarans keep saying, we're going to keep fighting this war unless we, was a date set, were terms picked, that type of stuff. That because he's not fighting Odium, the contest of champions as we know it, Odium is going to be able to wiggle out of. Now, the Black Arrow. There is a vital, and I don't know if I know the answer to this, but I think there is a vital flaw in Dalinar setting himself as the champion. And Odium knows it, which is the Black Arrow. I think there are people in the world that Dalinar will refuse to fight, and he will lose. And Odium can set one of those people as his champion.
That's a good theory. I'm trying to think of who he wouldn't fight. Would it be Navani or something?
My theory is even crazier. You ready?
Is it gonna be? I'll let you say it.
It's gonna be Gavinor. He's going to appoint Gavinor as his champion, and Dalinar is going to be forced to refuse the fight and lose.
That's pretty good. That's a pretty good prediction.
Because Odium knows that Dalinar will not choose anyone besides himself, because that's who Dalinar is. He will fight it himself. He's not going to, the way of kings, he's not going to assign someone a fight that he would not take himself. So all Odium has to do is find someone that Dalinar cannot beat, or will refuse to beat. That's my theory.
That's a really good theory. And that would be an excellent point. Like I would full props to like the storyline and everything that would happen with that. But I would be so mad. I'd be, dang it, like get out of here with that, you know.
I like that. I like that theory a lot. That definitely seems like a glimpse into the mind of Odium. Perhaps that's a very
Mhm.
Odium type way to
Yes.
do this. That's I think that's brilliant.
That is.
I guess I don't. My only hesitation with it is I don't quite see the symbolism of this vision matching up with that.
Right. Okay.
I'm not quite sure that I see that in this, but that doesn't mean that I don't believe in that theory. I think that theory is brilliant and could
But
definitely happen.
and I think the real linchpin here is it even puts more emphasis on Renarin, because
Right.
Renarin is part of this and changing the image, and Odium can't predict this. So I do think that this is what will happen were it not for Renarin being right in the picture. That
I see.
Yep.
Yeah.
I follow.
Like this is what would have happened. But it could be subject to change because of Renarin.
But Renarin is right there cracking the picture on the, like, the blackness on the, yeah, well, you get it.
Yes, yeah. Okay. That's pretty cool. I'm a
I
fan
like
of
it.
all this. Oh, I would love to hypothetically, if this is like a, let's say he's not fighting Gavin, or let's say it's someone he can fight and it's just a really good old-fashioned fight, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like Adolin duels kind of idea of thing. I'm imagining this as like an on-screen adaptation where you've like watched these movies or shows or whatever for so long, and then you get to the end and there's this like contest of champions, and Dalinar walks out in this like gleaming white, and just like, oh, that'd be so cool. That just I'm like picturing it so vividly in my head right now, and how he like pulls a shard blade out or just something like that, and just like, oh, that'd be
The Stormfather finally agrees to be a shard blade for him, and he pulls out
yes.
the storm blade, like,
Oh my
lightning
gosh.
and
Exactly. Exactly. That'd be so sick. Oh. And he says he definitely would have some incredible quote, you know, like
oh,
some
of
just like
course.
jaw dropping quote. And it'd just be like, oh my goodness, everything ever. And
And
it would
the
just
the
be epic.
Dalinar score theme just swells to like the
Yes.
max you've ever, like
Oh,
full orchestra, level.
And the last time you heard it, that full orchestra, was him charging down from the tower back in the first season. That's the last time you've heard it, like,
hmm
that full
Mm-hmm.
orchestra.
exactly, exactly. It like swoops in. Of course, there's the villain theme too, right? Like, I don't know. It would make way more sense for Kaladin to fight Moash, but in my head right now, that's who he would fight, is Moash or something. It would be like Odium's champion or something. The villain theme comes out, ooh, everyone boos, you know, and then
Now,
he gets a sweet, sweet vengeance victory.
question is
The viewer.
this book 4 scene we're talking about, or book 5 scene that we're talking about?
That's a good question.
If it works in the movie perfect way that I'm imagining, it would be like a book 5 scene of like this is kind of like almost kind of sort of like the final battle, or like a turning point, if anything. Um, but like what I actually think is going to happen in our book story is, if this happens, oh, that's a really good question. I don't think we're going to see this contest of champions in this book.
Okay.
So it'd 100% have to be it's the Sanderlanche. And I don't know exactly what the Sanderlanche will be right now. I think it's just going to be some crazy stuff with Venli and whatnot. But if it does happen, then it's going to be the like he's fighting Gavin or someone that he will refuse to fight, and it's anticlimactic
Right.
in that sense. Um, like surely I don't think Odium will be like defeated in this book since there's a book to go, you know. So, but that yep. Either way, there we go.
you guys want to that theory that Gavinor is the champion? I did not originate. It's been a thing in the fandom for a while, even before Oathbringer. You guys want to know where that comes from?
Before Oathbringer,
Oh yeah, I'm about to blow your mind. You ready?
Like before Oathbringer was released.
Oh yeah. You ready?
Like in Words of Radiance.
Words of Radiance. Here is a death rattle that you get in an epigraph. I hold the suckling child in my hands, a knife at his throat, and know that all who live wish me to let the blade slip, spill its blood upon the ground over my hands, and with it gain us further breath to draw.
If that is true, if that is truly a reference to Gavinor and some sort of statement of, oh, we should have killed this child while he was a child because he's going to win the war for Odium, that is a very deeply buried hint. I am impressed at y'all Cosmere fans for digging that up and making that connection. That seems far-fetched in my mind, but if it's true, then brilliant, I suppose.
And you said that was one of the death rattles, right?
Correct. From an
I
epigraph.
still don't. Okay, I still don't. And that's like one of the death rattles from Teravangian's like camp.
Yep.
Okay. I don't know what to do with it because of that.
And do you guys know, but I'll just remind you, where did the death rattles come from? What causes death rattles?
There's an unmade that causes death rattles. The name of which is Molak.
Is Moalak the one? Yeah, one of the I don't know which one it is, but one of the unmade has to be present while someone dies, and then they see a glimpse of the future and say 2 lines of cryptic text and then die.
Dang it.
So go back and read all those death rattles to start your theories. That's where these come from. Those end of book 5, all those theories. That's where these come from, is those death rattles. Anything else for 54 before we move on?
There is a discussion that Renarin kind of jumps into, which is, do we need more Radiance with corrupted Spren? Because I think he's the only one we've seen so far, but he seems to imply that at least Ja Anat wants more.
Yeah.
And it seems like we kind of trust Ja Anat, or Ja Anat maybe trying to make peace or help find a middle ground in all this. So it seems like that might be a good idea to try and create more corrupted, air quotes, Radiance.
Yeah. While we're on this topic, who else ordered a corrupted spren from Jean-Nat?
Oh yeah, Maraise struck a deal with Shalon, was it, to order him one of those?
Yes,
mail order.
Yes, he did.
Amazon Prime 2-day shipping.
Maraise is just in the speed run of collect all the magic systems from all the planets. He goes, picks up an AVR, comes Stormlight, picks up a sphere, picks up, a spren, moves on. That's his deal.
Renarin does end the chapter. I think it's like the last sentence of the chapter, even, with a very cryptic thought of, oh, I know the best candidate for the next person to bond a corrupted spren. And then the scene ends, and we don't get to know who he's thinking of.
Yeah.
but I have an idea of who it might be.
Who's
I was
it-
curious if
Who's
you
thinking
guys
of,
did.
Elliot?
I think you might be thinking of Relaine. I think that he might be thinking, oh, Relaine had a chance to bond a normal Spren, and Renard's been hanging out with the Windrunner, so he's familiar with Relaine. He probably knows that whole scenario pretty well. Relaine did not successfully bond an Honor Spren, and so I bet Renard is thinking of, oh, we have someone who's already kind of a good candidate to be a Radiant, but it didn't really work out for him. Maybe he just needs to be a different kind of Radiant. I think Relaine might fit nicely into our misfit Radiance category.
Yeah. Kind of attacks my Relaine as the second bondsmith theory, but I'll allow it.
Or a corrupted Spren bondsmith. I suppose there'd have to be some sort of not corruption of like the sibling or something like that.
All right.
That'd be crazy.
Raboniel successfully corrupts the pillar, but that doesn't kill the sibling like the sibling thinks will happen. That just gives it not powers, and there we go.
Yeah. Could happen. Anyway, that was my last thought there on that chapter.
Sounds good. 55, we're back to Kaladin. Kaladin is treating Teft in the room. He successfully snuck back from the infirmary where he got his broth and his clothes and stuff like that. Comes back, and who finds him?
Dabbid, right? Dabbid comes stumbling along.
He does. Dabbid shows up.
Less stumbling and more guided, it seems.
Yeah, presumably by the because Dabbid's talked to the sibling and Kaladin's talked to the sibling. So assuming the sibling just said, "Hey, Kaladin's in room 834 up there. Go say hi." So he does. Walks up, opens the door, waves at Kaladin, and Kaladin says, "All right, cool. Take care of Teft. I got to go do this thing." So that's where we leave them. This lets Kaladin not have to return to the room every 12 hours or so to feed Teft. He's free to explore the tower, defend Navani if it comes to that type of thing. He can let himself get captured without it being a death sentence for Teft here. So
there's another part of this chapter that I really got stuck on, and that is right at the beginning. Syl, she's done this a couple times now, but this one is the scariest yet. She starts to say very not Syl-ish things. And in this chapter, it gets downright dark. She's just talking to Kaladin, and she's like, how do you stand it knowing everyone around you is going to die? It's like, wait, what? That doesn't sound like Syl. That sounds like Moash, not Syl. Syl has always been, I think we talked about this before, because I think Syl's kind of done this a little bit before, where she seems to slip into another character almost, a very much a darker version of Syl. Syl has always been like the bubbly, happy, shining light, pull Kaladin out of the darkness kind of voice. So to see her start to do this is really worrying to me.
It's happened.
Really worrying.
Like you mentioned, it's happened multiple times now. Maybe even 3 or 4. 2 for sure.
And the similarity with some of the stuff that Moash intentionally pokes on makes me wonder, we know that Moash is trying to get after Kaladin. He's made it a mission to come and isolate Kaladin. Is Moash somehow influencing Syl or getting at Syl, or I don't know how that would work, but this doesn't sound like her. It sounds like him.
Yeah.
I'm I I need to say this with a disclaimer, but I'm kind of excited to see Moash again.
Oh no.
Only for literally just for story purposes, because I want to see, like, I don't want him to keep messing with Kaladin and stuff. Like, I'm ready for the like sweet vengeance, you know. Um, but like, I feel like that's ways off. I don't think that's going to happen yet. Um, but I feel like there may be stuff that is being influenced by Odium or Moash that we're not really seeing directly, but we might find out later in the book has been his doing, and I guess this could be something like that. I don't understand how he could affect Syl or how anyone would like affect Syl. Her like at least demeanor or personality or things like that. But I mean, what I feel like I've learned from this series is like kind of anything is possible, So
So let me entertain you with this idea. Let's go the other direction with it. What is Syl?
an honor spren.
Okay. How would she change? How can you make a spren change?
Or like the Nile bond
Okay.
kind of thing, like how she is with Kaladin, or is it tied to honor?
Elliot?
Or there's also the whole your perception of a spren changes what that spren is thing.
Correct. So we're talking about the relationship, both of those. I think, Paul, I think the relationship between Honor and Syl and the relationship between Kaladin and Syl are both capable of changing Syl. Could Kaladin's perception of Syl and or who she is in his life change her?
The answer would seem to be yes, because we've seen examples of how at least the lesser type spren, like a flame spren, can be very specifically changed.
Right. I would argue that this Syl change is a byproduct of the Kaladin attacks on Kaladin. As Moash isn't directly attacking Syl, as opposed to Moash is successfully getting through to Kaladin's head, and that is changing Syl.
So this is the symptom,
Correct,
of the Moash disease.
Right. So it's highlighting the severity of Kaladin's mental headspace right now, and how successful Moash and Odium are being here.
Okay, I follow.
Yeah, that is true, and I guess I forget about that as a factor, specifically with high spren. Like our high spren, I feel like I don't know. I can't think of a specific example, but I definitely feel like there's times where our characters have a lot of perceptions of their spren, like their high spren,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like it doesn't influence in the same way that we see with a normal like whatever flame sprint or something, um but
Yeah.
I mean that they still follow some sprint rules, like does that also mean that like whenever Syl appears as like a fully grown, like a full-sized woman and stuff like that, is Kaladin picturing her in that way, like imagining her in that way, or if someone else? Yeah, I feel like with high sprint it's different in my head, but
No, I agree. But you could also make the argument that when Syl becomes, her true form or whatever, of full size, Kaladin's about to have an honor moment. Like he's about to say
yeah,
an ideal.
that's true. It goes like hand in hand kind of
Right.
thing. Fair.
Kaladin sneaks down the side of the tower, and what does he find out? The Oath Gate is in fact being operated, but it's being operated by what appears to be void light. I mean, it's not confirmed, but it flashes like a dark red purple, as opposed to the blue white that we associate with Stormlight. So it appears to be operating via void light, which up until this point I assumed wasn't possible, but okay.
Well, similar to what we also learn a few pages later, that they're apparently also operating span reeds with void light as well.
Right.
It does seem like they're able to either directly operate fabrials even as large as an oath gate with void light, or they're modifying them somehow. Like maybe they have to like replace the gemstones or something like that, maybe with something different,
Right.
and then it works on void light. But either way, they're making stuff work with void light.
Yeah. And so Kaladin is off to go steal a span reed for Navani. He's deemed that worthy enough to go do. To if he can get Navani a void light span reed, maybe she can learn something about how to get help back to the tower. So anything else for 55 before we go to 56?
Not here.
Okay, Venli tells her followers to go wake up a windrunner in this chapter. When I read that, I'm like, what? Like, what? Why? First of all, why would that be a good idea? Second of all, what makes you like what? What's her explanation for that? And we don't get one. Her little dude that she tells to go wake up her windrunner, he asks the same question I am. He's like, why would we do that? And all she does is like, why are you questioning me? And that's it. That's all we get.
It's almost like we'll figure that when we get there sort of answer. It seems like a very plausible, at the very least, distraction. If Venli wants to, she's got her whole escape plan where they're like setting up this plan to go run and hide in the mountains and start a new society, new culture, new civilization. But you would think she'd finish making all her plans first before they, decide to pull the trigger. That seems like a pull the trigger moment.
Take a windrunner and go, wake up.
Yeah.
Wake up.
I'm with you. That doesn't seem the most well thought through idea on her part.
Yeah, it just made me laugh of like you don't assume that the fight or flight instinct is gonna kick in for this windrunner, and she's gonna beat up the entire room once you wake this windrunner up. But
No, that would never happen. Trust me, I'm a windrunner, okay?
oh yeah. So what would you do if you had storm form regals shaking you back and forth to try to wake you up?
Well, I would, of course, just speak to them in a nice, civilized way and be like, all right, well, I had a lovely nap. Thank you so much. It seems I've overslept. Thank you so much for your consideration. And then, be like, well, I appreciate it. I've got to go along my merry way at this moment. I've got things to attend to, windrunner things. And they'd be like, all right. You're certainly welcome, sir. I would even return a favor sometime if I ever came across a sleeping fused,
Seems like a cordial encounter.
No, totally.
Indeed. Very, very proper. Very honorable.
Oh, of course. There isn't too much in this chapter besides maybe Venli accidentally helping out with finding a node. There's a bunch of fuse that are just talking back and forth like, man, we can't find these nodes. They could be anywhere. We could search for years. And then Venli's kind of like, well, I'd put one where you could fill it with Stormlight. And she's like, oops. I probably shouldn't have said that. So we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, Venli's in that weird spot where she's kind of undercover, where she wants to still help them and show that she's a contributing part of the singer army. But then, here's the moment where she goes a little too far. And she's like, oops, that's going to help you a lot more than I wanted it to.
Yep. Anything else for this episode before we close it out? We'll see where some of these threads go and we can reconvene next week. Anything else?
Nothing else. As always, I'm excited to read more. The theories are getting far more convoluted. The more and more
Yes.
that we've gotten under our belt here at this point, the more knowledge we have to reference back to, the prognostications are getting way more complicated.
I was thinking about that some because, like, we find out like kind of a specific answer in this episode on some things, on like why Odium can't see stuff with Renarin, or why he's a missing link or something. We find that out, like why that is, and it leads to almost more confusion. I guess it's because we now know what we can play with, which in terms of seeing the future and altering what you're going to do because of that, it kind of opens a lot of doors. So that's natural. But that's something that I think is kind of fascinating with stuff we're learning, is we're learning actual things, like why this is the way it is. And it then causes utter chaos, or like a lack of answers on what could happen.
Yeah. Well, let's go find out what will happen. Let's keep reading, and we'll reconvene next week. Thanks for joining me, Paul and Eliot.
Let's do it.
Adios.